Welcome to the Odds Breakers, number one place for shared, sharp betting information.
Welcome back to podcast 36 of 2024. I'm your host, Kiev O'Neil. You can follow me on Twitter at OBKiev. Follow us at the Odds Breakers. Follow us on social media / the Odds Breakers. This episode is being brought to you by BetMGM. For a up to $1,500 sign-up bonus, please visit this podcast description. Click on the link for BetMGM. Terms, conditions, and location apply. If you like to support the Odds Breakers and benefit from our premium plays, please visit theoddsbreakers.com, click shop, and become a member. Pick any for winning cappers to get the premium plays before the line moves. You can also support us on patreon.com, and if nothing else, please visit the Odds Breakers and become a free Picks and Telegram subscriber. We have a great show for you today because it's NFL time. And I know it's not the start of the NFL season, but this is when we start talking about the NFL. The season schedule was supposed to be released this week, but it's been delayed due to some money issues. The NFL's trying to figure out who's going to be televising some of their Christmas games, I believe. Got a little inside source telling me some of that. And apparently it's been postponed to next week, but that's no big deal because we're still talking about some data points from last year. One of my favorite things to do is to come up with the Pythagorean win totals, meaning you're finding out the expected wins from last year compared to the actual wins. So these Pythagorean win totals have proven many times over to be a valuable predictor of future success just based upon what teams should have done relative to what they've actually done. And I'll give you a couple examples. And I do this every year for this show, okay? So, well, first of all, I probably should talk about the fact that Pythagorean wins are based upon the total points you've scored and the total points you've given up and how many wins you should have had. For example, last year, the Vikings were the biggest outlier last year in season win totals. They almost scored, actually they scored less points than they've actually given up and somehow had 13 wins. Their Pythag was a minus 4.68 wins or total games over what their expected was. So back then, their expected wins based upon the points scored and points given up was actually 8.32. And they had 13 actual wins last year, so they massively overachieved. So I love doing this little exercise because I think it helps you find value, what to look for next year. And I know teams change, obviously. There's coaching changes. And this doesn't mean we're going to bet every single win total. But the truth is, if you blindly bet these top outliers when it comes to underachievers and overachievers, it has proven very profitable. And I'm going to have this article up on our website maybe by this week and maybe by Monday, explaining the 2014 Pythagorean win totals from the 2013 data, right? Because we're using this information to predict 2014 based upon what they did from an expected win comparison to actual win comparison. So this is great information for all you NFL fans. And maybe we'll find a play together when we're looking at some of these win totals on some of the outliers. Before we get into that, I just want to remind you, baseball's rolling, NBA's rolling. I'm profitable in both. On a nice little 6-0 run here for Major League Baseball, profitable this year. NBA, I'm on a nice little run myself. I believe something like 5-1. Just looking at some of my history here. Hopefully I can stay hot and stay profitable throughout the NBA. And to be honest with you, NBA is really a lot about reading markets. You read the markets, you look at what the teams did before, you kind of think what kind of effort you're going to get from these teams. Maybe the officials are going to lean one way or the other. I mean, that's really a lot more in the NBA than the actual results that they've put through during the regular season. In the regular season, they're not trying every single game. There's guys that's been injured. It's really hard to use just complete data when it comes to NBA. I think the actual data-driven handicappers in the NBA are losing. And playoff basketball is certainly a lot different than regular season basketball. So when it comes to a sport, the NBA, it's a very creative handicap. But I think I've got it down. Being the last few seasons, I have been profitable. So very happy about that. If you want any information on my packages to finish out this season, we have it at theoddsbreakers.com, or you can just DM me, and I'd be happy to talk about a special price to finish out the rest of the seasons. All right. Well, here we are. We have the NFL. We have the NFL Pythagorean win totals that I calculated this week. So kind of a little bit refresher on this. So what you do is the Pythagorean theorem is based upon the distance between 2 points. If you know the distance of A and you know the distance of B, you want to know the distance of C, where A and B cross, right, on a right triangle. It's just kind of like figure out someone drives this way, someone drives that way. How long is it going to take for them to meet in the middle if they start driving towards each other? That's what it's really based upon. Now, there's a lot of real life scenarios that this is based upon as well. Lots of manufacturing type situations where they would use this theorem to figure out price, to figure out supply and demand and things like that. But we like to use it for sports betting because you know that NFL is a very random sport. And just because you got lucky at the end of some games, won a lot of one score or 1 point games, yet you're losing to other teams by a lot of points, you could definitely be overachieving just based upon how strong your situation is. And it works for baseball too, right? I mean, there's a lot of baseball situations where you look at total runs, it's your total runs are in the positive, yet maybe you have a minus 500 record just because you're not building up these runs in the perfect situation where you beat everybody by 1 point. You can lose 3 games in a row by 1 to 2 points and then win 3 games in a row by 6 to 10, right? Are you actually a 500 team? No, you are much better than a 500 team. You're just not putting the runs together in the right times. And the same thing can be applied to football and other sports. So this is why we do it, and it's a great predictor of future outcomes. So the article is going to go back into this, and it's not exactly squared because the Pythagorean theorem is a squared plus b squared equals c squared. The truth is that the exponent has to be a little bit better, and we do a logarithmic exponent where you're actually looking at the total points in their season, total points scored and total points given up. The higher the points are, the exponent's going to end up being higher based on the logarithm, and the lower it is, the exponent's going to be lower. For example, you want to look at a team like the Detroit Lions. They scored a ton of points and they've given up a lot of points. Their exponent was 2.55 for this function. And if you want to look at a team like the Tampa Bay Bucks, they scored 348. They gave up 325. Their exponent was 2.39. So a pretty big difference when it comes to those two teams and their exponent. The Patriots is even lower. So, think about that. If there's just a lot of low-scoring games, then, well, you don't have to use the higher exponent based upon this theorem. But it's all written here in this article. You can see it from last year and look in it for next year. So let's look at some of the results from last year as far as the top 5, because these articles always have the top 5. And I made a lot of bets based upon this last year, if you remember. The number one I just talked about was the Minnesota Vikings, 8.32 expected wins compared to their 13 actual wins, right? The biggest overachiever. Well, I mean, I saw 8.5 as their win total, and I came up after doing all my data and my numbers that they should be more of an 7.5 to 8 win type situation. And I was one of the few. I went on a limb, and it was under 8 at plus money, around plus 120. As a matter of fact, a lot of people like the Vikings season win total over. And everyone knew about this Pythagorean difference, while the sharper people did, but they just figured the adjustment in the market was too much, but it proved not to be because the Vikings only got 7 wins last year, and this was one of our big wins. So the number one overachiever, once again for the next season, goes under the win total, right? So we were very happy to give that out last year. The Philadelphia Eagles, here's another one. Their win total was around 11.5, 12 in some books. They were an overachiever last year by 2.55 games. They actually won 14 games last year. They should have won 11.45. Well, going under 11.5, 12 for the Eagles. Definitely one for you because the Philadelphia Eagles did win 11 games, and they actually lost quite a few games, and they're just an abomination, just an absolute mess towards the end of the season. So the under hits with the Eagles. And the Kansas City Chiefs, the same thing. It was 11.5. They had 11.71 expected wins compared to their 14 actual wins last year. Well, the Kansas City Chiefs, another one of those teams that only won 11 games. So they went under their season win total as well last year. And this was another plus money hit. The Pittsburgh Steelers. Okay, so the Pittsburgh Steelers had expected wins of 7 last year, 7.09, and they had 9 expected wins, a minus 1.91 difference. This one is actually one that was wrong. They overachieved last year, and they overachieved again this year, so this went the opposite way. So 3-1 so far for betting these just blindly betting the overachievers under. And they had 10 wins last year, not 9 wins. So, yes, they definitely went over their season win total. And then finally, the last overachiever, the LA Chargers. They had expected wins of 8.42 compared to their 10 actual wins last year. I bet them under. I can't remember if I gave this one out. I'm not sure if I did. But I had a personal play on it. And, man, they were an abomination last year. This went way under. So 4-1 just on blindly betting the overachievers under. So now let's go for the underachievers over. The Raiders had expected wins of 2.36 from 2022 season to 2023 compared to their 6 actual wins. Well, guess what? The Raiders' season win total was around 7.5. It was actually bet down a ton. The Raiders ended up winning 8 games last year. You remember that big win they had against Denver in that last game. So I found that interesting. So we're 5-1. Now this Chicago Bears one might have bucked the trend too, because the Bears had expected wins of 5.09 compared to their 3 actual wins, but their season win total was set all the way up to 7.5. So they're underachievers last year. To bet them over, you'd have to go over 7.5. I mean, that number was huge. I hope you didn't bet that because I didn't think the Bears were going to go over 7.5, and they ended up with 7. This was just the market sniffing it out. But still, like, you would have thought that they would have had wins of like 6, 6.5. But just so much hype from the Bears last year for what they did in free agency, and everyone thought Justin Fields was going to turn that corner and become a better passer. That never happened. So we're 5-2 right now in this situation. The New Orleans Saints. So they had expected wins of 8.71 as an underachiever, and they won 7 wins last year. Well, to be honest, the Saints, they were around 9 wins last year. There's some 9.5s, I guess, but there are some 8.5s juiced to the over. I'm going to call this a push. I think that if you bet the Saints, it just depends upon what number you got last year. I saw a lot of 9s last year, and they won 9 games last year. So I think the high point of it was 9.5. I hope you didn't bet over 9.5 wins, but 9. This was really close. It's hard for me to say it won or lost, so I'm going to stay with 5-2-1 for this one. Next is the Houston Texans as an underachiever. Expected wins of 4.93 compared to their 3.5 adjusted wins for the tie last year, a 1.43. Texans were amazing last year. This went way over. Texans, 10 wins last year. So just a massive regression, and this predicted it. Now we are 6-2-1 here on blindly betting these underachievers from last year's show, and then we are finally going to the Denver Broncos. The Broncos had expected wins of 6.36 to 5 adjusted with the tie, but this is another one where the market set it really high. The market set it around 8.5. This actually, I'll even count this as under, but I think there was a lot of 8s as well. Well, the Denver won 8 games, but I'll count this as actually going against the trend at 3. So we are 6-3-1 here for the blindly betting these season win totals. It's just when the market really adjusts on an underachiever. I mean, it's hard to sometimes get to the window, although the market did adjust a lot on Minnesota and it still went under. So I was really happy about that plus money last year. So, hey, am I going to blindly bet these? I don't know about that. I don't really blindly bet anything, but I'm certainly going to be looking at this data very heavy when it comes to predicting for next year.
You son of a bitch.
All right, let's move into the 2023 season data for 2024 numbers, and I compiled it all. And like I said, this is going to be released on our website at theoddsbreakers.com. So I can just kind of ramble off all this data, but I think I'm just going to stick this podcast to being the top 5 on the underachievers and the overachievers instead of getting into everything. But there's definitely good reason to look at some of these unders, all right? Starting with the biggest overachiever, the Steelers had 7.17 expected wins compared to their 10 actual wins. Now, this wasn't as big as the Vikings last year, but still a 2.83 game difference. Okay, that is pretty big. And that's definitely going to make me want to look towards the under. I mean, they're the luckiest team in the NFL for the 2023 season. They just had a lot of fourth quarter comebacks due to their opponents choking the games away. I mean, there was a ton of them last year. And I mean, as a bettor, if you're fading the Steelers, it was you were pulling your hair out, man. I remember all that. I was part of those people pulling their hair out. But either way, we're looking at numbers right now as underachievers. They did make a lot of different moves last year. They drafted pretty well with the offensive line, and I'm obviously going to be talking a lot more about this when we do our forecast, maybe even starting next week, starting with the NFC North. But right now, their season win total is 8.5, juiced to the over at minus 120. Ooh. Russell Wilson and Justin Fields. What could go wrong, right? I'm close to taking this under, man. Let me look on FanDuel here. This was DraftKings that I was looking at. Now, the problem is that Mike Tomlin is always that guy that gets between 8 and 9 wins. And I shouldn't expect it to be any different this year. But at even money, I'm just playing against the book itself, even if I'm going to go to the under. What's interesting is FanDuel actually has under 7.5 wins at plus 148. So their real number is about 8 wins. So FanDuel's actually lower on the Steelers than other teams. Now the Steelers, they're going to get a third place schedule. So listening to thinking about that, I'd rather have them play a second place schedule if I was going to go under those wins. But man, I'm close to possibly making this play. So just letting you know, the New York Giants are the next overachiever to discuss. For as bad as this team was last year, they still should have been worse. They should have been in Carolina Panther territory. The G-Men had only 3.94 expected wins compared to their 6 actual wins last year. That's a 2.06 game difference. When this team played the good teams, they were blown out. Now, the New York Giants season win total this year is 6.5, juiced to the under, minus 135. So they're telling you, yeah, 6.5 is probably a little bit too high. It's too bad that the Commanders suck more because the Giants have the third place schedule and don't have the fourth place schedule. But that's going to make me look a little bit more towards the under. Maybe some more optimism climbs within this team and you get a better 6.5. I don't know. It's one of those where you have 17 games. Getting to 7 wins isn't impossible for a team that has nothing to lose. Daniel Jones has a lot to prove. Maybe some injuries hurt the Cowboys or the Eagles. I'm looking to the under, but I'm not quite there yet. And watch, just if you look at the trends like I just went over and over the years in this podcast, probably better to go under than over. Next is the Philadelphia Eagles, same division. The Eagles had expected wins of 9.13 compared to their 11 actual wins last year. They went under last year by a half game, but still should have even went farther under. A minus 1.87 game difference. This team started out on a rampage, going 10-1 in their first 11 games, yet only to go 1-6 in their final 7, including their ugly playoff loss to Tampa Bay. 1-5 in the regular season, 1-6 if you count that ugly playoff loss. But man, what a crumble from the Philadelphia Eagles. But the problem I have with the Eagles, and their season win total is probably going to be higher than 9.13 expected wins, is that I think that they drafted really well again, man. These Eagles just seem to be very good at the draft, and their season win total is 10.5, adjusted to the under. So they won 11 games. They should have won 9, yet you're at 10.5, juice to the under. Not going to run to this one just yet until I see a little bit more information on the outlook for this year. One bad thing about the Eagles is that they lose a home game playing in Brazil. That should have been a home game against the Packers. That kind of turns into a neutral game now. So that definitely hurts the Eagles a little bit if you're thinking about their wins for this coming year. So, just based upon the data of 9.13, I'll lean to under 10.5. But, the Eagles could be back next year if done right. I'd still bet the under. Detroit Lions. The Lions had expected wins of 10.16 last year, and their actual wins were 12, a minus 1.84 difference. So, yeah, the Lions overachieved some, but even though they overachieved, they're still 14-6 ATS. That's a lot. They were the best ATS team last year with the 2 playoff games, and they were just undervalued from the start of the season and very underrated. Looking at their season win total, it's at 10.5. That's pretty fair. Expected wins of 10.16, actual wins of 12. Jared Goff can be pretty clutch, 10.5. And it's juiced to the over, minus 125. I'm very close to that number. I'm not really jumping at anything until I do more research and finally see how Seahawks. Seahawks had expected wins of 7.35 compared to their 9 actual wins last year, a 1.65 difference in wins. Regression was the big thing last year for the Sea Chickens, and they've lost ground to division rival, the LA Rams. Now they have a new coach. Mike McDonald has his work cut out for him with quarterback Geno Smith and a whole new system. The 3-4 scheme remains the same, is what I'm going to write for my article. Let's look at what their season win total is, because I didn't even pull up 7.5. It's even, minus 110 on each side. Whew. Their expected wins was 7.35 with Pete Carroll. Now they have a new coach, and they have a 3rd place schedule. I'm thinking under. I am definitely thinking under 7.5. New coach, new honeymoon season. I know they're only my 5th overachiever, not my first overachiever. What we do know is the 3rd place schedule is going to get them against the Giants, which should be maybe a win. But the Vikings, I'm thinking they lose to the Vikings. I know the Vikings were predicted to be bad this year, and I think that their win total is around 6.5. But now just looking at that, that's a moot point. They have to play the whole NFC North anyway. That's their at-large division. So they have to play the Vikings, the Bears, the Packers, and the Lions. So you're looking at the Giants. They get the Giants at home, but they have to go to Atlanta. They have to go to the New York Jets, who is their AFC at-large team, which I expect Aaron Rodgers to be healthy. They're going to the Patriots because it looks like they play the AFC East. Instead, they're playing that full at-large schedule. But then they also have the Bills at home and the Dolphins at home. You know, I would rather have the guaranteed wins and play the Bills and Dolphins away and instead get the Jets and the Patriots at home. But now they have to go away to the Jets and Patriots, which could be losses, and they're probably going to lose to the Dolphins and the Bills. I'm going under. Let's do it. Let's go under 7.5. And on FanDuel, it is plus money. Under 7.5 wins plus money plus 112. Let's do that for 1.5 stars.
Soon as he buy that wine, I just creep up from behind.
That brings us to our underachievers. And starting with the LA Chargers. The Chargers had expected wins of 7.05 compared to their 5 actual wins last year, a plus 2.05 difference. The sad thing is that this team had a season win total around 10 before opening kickoff, sending coach Brandon Staley to the 49ers as a defensive coordinator. Now, the Chargers were 6 for 11 against the spread, so they were just disgusting all over the place. The Bolts, 3 for 8 in one-score games. They only won 3 and they lost 8 one-score games, and just some very poor coaching. But here's the thing. The Chargers have such an upgrade this year in coach, and that's why their season win total is all the way up to 8.5, juiced to the over at minus 155 for Harbaugh. You're talking about 5 wins last year, and now their season win total is 8.5. Even though they had expected wins of 7.5, it's still over as an underachiever. I agree with it. I think the Chargers are going to be just an awesome team next year just because of Coach Harbaugh. And I give Harbaugh a ton of credit. He's one of the best coaches in football, period. He is. Number 2, the Carolina Panthers. The Panthers had expected wins of 3.92 compared to their pathetic 2 actual wins last year, a 1.92 difference. This is really bad because usually if you have 2 wins in the NFL, they're the top underachiever. You know, anybody that low, just because they also had a ton of bad luck. But in this case, they're the number 2 one. So that just goes to show you that Carolina was as bad as they looked. I mean, from the most part, there's still a 1.92 game difference, but geez. The Panthers never led a game at the start, and at the start of the fourth quarter. That's a massive stat that we talked about last year. And Carolina, I don't know how I'm going to get to the window on them. I don't think they drafted well, starting with a receiver. This team is an absolute mess. Underachievers say to bet the over. No chance. I'm going over 4.5 at minus 140 as of right now. I know the division's weak, but I just don't know what to do with Bryce Young. Number 3, the Minnesota Vikings for underachievers. Now, that's just funny because the Queens had expected wins of 8.68. They had expected wins of 8.31 last year when they won 13 games. Now, they absolutely did the opposite. They had 7 actual wins last year, a 1.68 game difference, plus 1.68. They underachieved. But here's the thing. They lost their quarterback. How times have changed here, and now it just adds a lot of confusion to their situation. And the Minnesota Vikings, because they changed quarterback, their win total goes down to 6.5. Can they do better than 6.5 in this NFC North where the Packers are supposed to be a playoff team, the Lions are supposed to be a division winner, and the Bears are supposed to be much improved? That's tough to do. That's tough to get to the counter there, you know, because of this massive change. So the trend says to bet over 6.5, but I'm not laying over 6.5 juiced on the Minnesota Vikings. Who knows? Maybe McCarthy is the truth. I mean, we'll soon find that out. Next is the Arizona Cardinals. And the Cardinals expected wins of 5.31 compared to their 4 actual wins. They are underachieved by 1.31 games. The Cardinals had it tough for a while without Kyler Murray. Then Josh Dobbs showed some life, then went quickly from hero to zero. He does this with every team he goes to. And then you have Murray, who did good for a few games, then just dropped. This team's the hardest for me to predict anywhere, right? Expected wins of 5.31. The Cardinals is the season win total 6.5. So underachieving at 4 games tells you to bet the over, but it's adjusted higher than their expected wins of 5.31 to 6.5 juice to the over. Kyler Murray, Rich Gannon, it wouldn't shock me if this team wins 9 or 10 games. It wouldn't shock me if they won 3 next year. I am so confused with what to do, and I'm going to wait to do a deeper dive on the Arizona Cardinals for next year. And finally, my number 5th underachiever is the New England Patriots. The Patriots had expected wins of 5.12 compared to 4 adjusted wins, a 1.12 difference. Maybe the most disappointing team in the league, minus the Chargers. Many people expected a lot more out of Bill Belichick. I always said it's more Tom Brady, but Belichick's still a great coach and a great defensive mind. Just poor drafting, terrible offensive coaches. He made some dumb hiring decisions with Patricia the year before and O'Neil and Bill O'Brien right after that, So it's just a massive change now, but I'm not that high on Jared Mayo. This team should have won 5.12 games, and their season win total is 4.5. So, I mean, as an underachiever, you kind of want to bet the 4.5, but the truth is that I don't think this team is any good either. And they had 4 wins last year. 4.5 at minus 160 means they plan on having 4 wins next year. I'm actually not touching this right now until I do some more information and some more digging. So those are the top 5 on each side. What's funny about the Bears season win total is that it's 8.5 juice to the over. Remember, it was 7.5 last year. Well, there's so much hype around this team that it's 8.5. I'll just quick cover the Bears since that's my team. Yeah, the Chicago Bears expected wins last year was actually 7.79. So there was a 0.79 difference from their 7 wins. They actually underachieved last year, so this says bet the over, and now it's just because of the Caleb Williams and everything. It's juiced all the way to 8.5. I think my pre-number before I see the schedule is 8.5 wins on the Bears, and it's all going to depend really on how good these Vikings are. They need to win 1 to 2 games against the Vikings, maybe steal one against the Packers or the Lions at home if they want to touch that 8.5. But the good news for the Bears is that they have a third-place schedule. I guess a fourth-place schedule would have been a little bit nicer, but they do have no. Actually, it is fourth-place schedule. My fault. They have a fourth-place schedule, so better chance to get more wins possibly here. But the big thing is Bears hiring offensive coordinator Shane Waldron, in my opinion, because he came from Seattle, and I think he was a big part of the reason that Seattle had a lot of success there with Geno Smith. So I'm above. I don't know if he's a great hire. I think I'm above average on him. I'm happy they have Waldron. I think it's a good situation for him to walk into a new team, walk into a rookie here, and kind of show Caleb Williams the ropes. I'm still a little bit worried about the offensive line. I'm still a little bit worried about the defensive line a little bit, but they spent a lot of money. They really improved their secondary. Yeah, 8.5 is a really good, solid number for the Bears, so that's what we're staying with. So in summary, my friends, season win totals are very, very correlated with this Pythagorean win theorem that I put out every single year for the NFL. So definitely check it out when this article comes out. But as of right now, our official play is the Seattle Seahawks under 7.5 at FanDuel for plus 114. My friends, thank you so much for listening to this episode of The Oddsbreakers. If you have any questions for next week, please feel free to tweet us at The Oddsbreakers. Email us at info@theoddsbreakers.com. Have a great rest of your week and go get some winners.